Good afternoon. Welcome to another Sunday edition of On the Front Lines with Christie Hutcherson. Today's guest is none other than retired Sergeant Boone Cutler. He is the co-author with General Flynn. And if you caught my episode last Sunday with General Michael Flynn, we kind of skirted on the 5G warfare, fifth generation warfare, and about military implications on a world global scale. But Boone Cutler is the co-author of that. Boone also served in Iraq in the Army as a psychological operations officer, which he's going to kind of touch in a little bit and tell you a little bit about his background, why he decided to co-author a book with General Flynn on fifth generation warfare and why it's relevant. Why should you, the American people, care? And quite frankly, on a world scale audience, why do you care whether we are going into what is called fifth generation warfare? And by the way, it's very different from kinetic. Kinetic warfare is boots on the ground, military weapons, things like that, soldiers. Fifth generation warfare is a little bit different. And again, we're going to delve into that. But first, I want to thank a couple of my sponsors. I'm asked all the time, Christie, how can I make a difference? What can I do? I'm disabled. I'm in my home. There's not much I can do on the battlefield. Well, that's not true. The battlefield is everywhere you are. It starts with your wallet. Quite frankly, we need to stop funding the corporations who are woke and are funding the demise of our constitutional republic. I'm going to name a couple of those incredible companies that I have personally vetted. I use their products. I put my money where my mouth is. I wouldn't have you use a product that I don't personally use myself and have been for a long time. Patriot Mobile. I cannot speak enough good things about this company. You heard General Flynn actually last week just go on and on. It was so funny because I contacted Patriot Mobile and I said, oh my God, look at this. This is an incredible endorsement for not only the work that Women Fighting for America does, but Patriot Mobile. So this is where truly the Patriots make their phone calls. PatriotMobile.com. You have to use our promo codes with all of this. It's WFFA. You will get free activation. Each company does something a little special for those who are supporting Women Fighting for America to be in the field. So Patriot Mobile, promo code WFFA. Another sponsor who I absolutely love, Patriot Switch. Patriot Switch. Please, please, please. Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, these are very evil companies. When I tell you they're evil just like Monsanto and all of them. If you want to buy products that aren't going to poison you and kill you and have all of these chemicals and stuff that cause cancer and agents that when you put them on your counters and you're wiping your counters down, you're actually putting that residue and then you're ingesting it. And then you wonder why cancer rates are out of control. It's because they're poisoning us. So if you want to go to a company that does not manufacture in China, manufactures here, is clean products that I personally use in my own house right now, you need to do Patriot Switch. Patriot Switch by American Made Products. JoinTheFightNow.com. That's where you need to go. JoinTheFightNow.com. Please do that. And Bridie on TV, of course. If without Bridie on TV having me on here, you wouldn't hear truth. You wouldn't have these great informative speakers. Please go to the Brighteon store, brighteon.com, promo code WFFA, Brighteon store. It helps to fund programming like On the Front Lines with Christie Hutcherson. I'll talk about a couple other ones that I use. MyPillow, mypillow.com, another great sponsor. Thank you so much. Mike Lindell probably is one of the most incredible men that I've ever met, putting all of his money and his resources to fighting for truth and getting to the bottom of truth. So please, mypillow.com, WFFA. When you go to these companies, not only are you supporting programs like On the Front Lines, you're supporting us, Operation Archangel, so we can be in the field combating and eradicating human trafficking and child trafficking, which I'll get into later, but this is so important. Operation Archangel, literally, it's our boots on the ground, full on, going in and eradicating these evil doers. And that's what it is. We'll have a program about that. Actually, Thursday night, we're going to replay the program because we're going to be live this Thursday and you won't know about it until after the fact. but we're going to be doing a program and we're going to talk about human trafficking. GiveSendGo.com/WFA border, Operation Archangel. You will be funding the troops that we need to be on the ground to go in and do the hard work that needs to eradicate this disease called human trafficking. So my guest, Boone Cutler, I'm so excited. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun 50 minutes. Hold on to your hats. Buckle up for a roller coaster ride. Bring on Boone. Hey, Boone, how are you doing today?
Good, Christy. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on your show. This is very exciting. General Flynn couldn't speak highly enough of you. And he said, hey, you got to go on Christie's show. You got to talk about fifth generation warfare. You got to talk about the upcoming book, How to Fight Artificial Intelligence. And you're happy to have us, and we're happy to be here.
Yeah. So Boone, let's just get into this. First and foremost, can you give just a little snippet of your background, what you used to do, and what qualifies you to collaborate on such an incredible book? And it's going to be a series of fifth generation warfare information for the layman out there to understand what's really going on in this country, and quite frankly, from a globalist elite perspective.
Yeah, that's a good place to start, because it's such an interesting story, and it was one of those organic things. It wasn't something that we're just sitting around a boardroom and trying to figure out how we're going to strategize on something. It was simple as General Flynn and I were standing in a hallway one day, and I was traveling the country doing specifically stuff around veterans issues. I've been a veteran advocate since 2010. I've done a lot of work in that space. And General Flynn has been doing what he's been doing. And we've had two different target audiences, completely different target audiences. As he's traveling around doing a lot more politically focused stuff, I'm focused on veteran stuff. And then he says to me one day, he says, you know, every time I get done speaking, I've got people coming up to me asking me what is going on in the country. I don't understand these things. I'm confused. It seems like there's just so much dissension everywhere. And he says, and I think it's pretty simple. And so I explain it to them, and they walk away and they feel like, oh, that's interesting. I said, well, it's crazy, because I'm getting the same thing, and it's a totally different target audience. And it doesn't matter if it's some corn-fed white boy in Alabama who feels that way, or if it's a gay black female in Chicago feeling that way. That's a conservative or a liberal or Democrat. The Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives, are feeling the same way, and they really don't know what to call it. And so I've been explaining it. He's been explaining it. Before we knew it, we literally just kind of fell in on this topic, fifth generation warfare. They don't understand, or people don't understand, what fifth generation warfare is and how it affects literally everybody in this sphere, in this space, because it's in the cognitive battle space. It's not in the like you said, it's not little green guys running around up a hill and trying to plant a flag, and like you would see on the television and the movies. But primarily, a lot of it is psychological operations. It is the battle for the battle space inside of a country that starts with the cognitive battle space and works from the political side down and works from the populist side up. And ultimately, that creates change within a society. And so we put out the first of the session, the first in the series, which is Introduction to Fifth Generation Warfare. And the main center of gravity that's being used in all these operations by foreign countries, by NGOs, by non-state actors, is artificial intelligence. And so we had to create a book to explain to people how to neutralize these centers of gravity that are used within fifth generation warfare. And the number one center of gravity used by the CCP, which is our main adversary, is artificial intelligence, and all the way that it does psychological programming. People don't understand, when you're looking at a screen, there's a good chance there's an AI behind that program that has targeted you. And in that targeting process, you are being manipulated based upon susceptibilities, vulnerabilities, psychographics, not demographics. And it gets very, very, very deep. And we're exposing our children to these things. I mean, they're being indoctrinated in the schools. They're being indoctrinated in the colleges. They're being indoctrinated through the corporatocracy of America. And they're being indoctrinated every time you hand them a tablet, because you're just trying to keep them busy. When you need to keep their ass outside with the soccer ball.
Really interesting right there. So I want to really hone in on that, because I think, you know, I think people have dabbled in this. You know, I'm a mom of young adult males, and, you know, they've been blessed because the background that their father and I have, it's all in the military realm and the DoD space on very high levels. And so they're used to this. So they knew what to look for. They know that there's psychological warfare and profiling. And I think that that's really key. There's a psychological profile that goes on. And this has been going on with these big social media conglomerates. And it's not a mistake that the FBI and the CIA and the DOJ and the White House, this corrupt White House, has been working hand in hand with these major, not only media conglomerates, but social media conglomerates, because they're collecting data. How do they do that? Because we talk about this all the time. Even when your cell phone is not on, it's always on and it's always listening, and it's profiling you. It's not a mistake. Like if you've ever sat there with a friend talking about, oh, I think I want to go buy a car or a piece of jewelry. And then all of a sudden you have all of these advertisements on your social media talking about and showing you pictures of that. That is what that's just one small little snippet that most people can kind of layman can get their mind around. But this idea of psychological operations isn't anything new. This was birthed out of right after the Second World War with the CIA creation and how they've honed that psychological operations. We've actually used this type of tactics, not in the social media realm because we didn't have that technology, but to actually topple and take over governments. So let's kind of talk about that.
Yeah, what you're talking about is natural language processing, and that is a thing. Your phone is listening to you, and it can pick up your natural language, like just like you and I are talking, and decide what that means, and then it goes through an algorithm to determine, okay, how do you satisfy that need? And retailers do that, or merchandisers, companies do that, businesses do that. But you got to be crazy to think that it's only businesses doing it for profit. It's also countries doing it. It's your own country. It's other countries. And so when you're talking about a certain thing around people, it's picking up, it's listening to certain keywords. It's listening for certain sentiment. There's sentiment analysis. It's listening for emotion around certain topics. And this all goes into a matrix, and these go into data sets. And the largest aggregator of these data sets in the world is the CCP, is China. And so it doesn't matter if it's in the United States, Canada, Australia, UK, it doesn't matter. They're doing the same thing to everybody. And this is how they get control of things. They aggregate everybody's data into these data sets, and these data sets train AI to be able to control situations. It is the equivalent of having a dictator in your pocket. Wow, that could sound kind of weird, but it's the equivalent of having some authoritarian entity constantly around you, looking at every single thing you do and how you do it, and learning from it on how to manipulate you. We're teaching these things how to manipulate ourselves. And because everything is weaponized until something better can be weaponized, it's obviously going to be weaponized.
Yeah, you're 100% correct on that. And, people do not understand, or they underestimate, honestly, quite frankly, the threat of China. I believe with all of the intel and information that I've been able to gather, especially over the last couple of years, with China specifically, not only from a kinetic perspective, but also from a 5G perspective of how they're going to infiltrate, not only infiltrating into the United States of America, but formulating their battle plan, so to speak. And China is right now the number one, I believe, threat facing the United States of America, and actually on a global scale. And China has been stealing corporations and defense stuff for years and decades. And we've allowed this to happen. And parents have allowed TikTok in their homes with their children. And this is very concerning. I believe that TikTok honestly should have been completely banned from the United States of America, should not be allowed in anywhere in our country. What do you say to that?
I say it's another element of influencing the influencers that influence you. Okay, the way that TikTok and all these social media programs work is it's being run by the CCP, or it's being run by big tech, and they have a plan for that to be able to push and force an agenda. And it's the same way Hollywood. Hollywood, for a long time, you couldn't get a job in Hollywood. You couldn't work in Hollywood unless you had a certain ideology. You were susceptible to a certain ideology. And then they prop you up. They give you the audience because they knew you were susceptible to pushing their messaging. Well, it's the same thing now in the CCP. The CCP specifically with TikTok, and by the way, the TikTok and the CCP is not the same as it is in the United States. In China, it's totally different. There, they focus on education, on wellness, on all the positive things that you can build up a country. Meanwhile, the rest of the world they're focusing on things that will tear down a country. And so they identify someone, A, that's good looking, B, that they have a talent people will watch, and C, they are susceptible to that Marxist ideology. So when they push things in their feed, they turn it around and make that message their own to their audience. This is how you co-op audiences. PSYOP 101, it's key communicators. It's propping up key communicators, co-opting them, get them to push your message so it doesn't come from you, it comes from them. Meanwhile, the whole thing is contrived, and especially on TikTok, what do? They allow people to monetize what they're doing. So they think they're the next Pavarotti, they're the next hottest thing, and their ego gets involved, and they start protecting the platform, and they think they're a genius. Meanwhile, they're just pushing people to these influencers so they'll be able to receive a message. They're allowing it to be monetized so they protect it. And the number one thing you're going to see on all these platforms when people start talking about shutting them down is, oh, you're affecting freedom of speech. You're affecting freedom of speech. You can't control freedom of speech. You know what? Freedom of speech is for Americans in America. It has nothing to do with someone in China or Pakistan who wants to launch an AI in the United States. We're not protecting Pakistanis' freedom of speech. We're protecting America's freedom of speech. But people don't know what's behind the platform. They don't know what's behind these techniques. And so they scream freedom of speech when they really don't understand that you're all being duped.
Yeah, this is a show for another day, but I just had, I was being interviewed actually, and I was talking about that. They were talking about illegals' rights, and there's a lot of things that go behind that. And I'm like, there is no rights to illegals. There's no rights to other countries who are breaking into another country, and they are not protected underneath the Constitution of the United States of America. And so, but again, that's the dumbing down. That's another topic for another day, to not understand our Constitution, our republic, of what and how that document's created and how it protects legal American citizens. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I really want to delve into this. First and foremost, can you explain in layman's term what exactly, because people hear this term all the time, psychological operations, psychops. So it's a tool used for what purpose? And so let's kind of break that down. There's state and non-state actors that have to do with this in its manipulation tool, but let's delve into that, because, and then how are they using that with 5G warfare? How do they go hand in hand?
Yeah, well, let's discuss, what is fifth generation warfare and how did we get there? Because I think that's an important thing. We started out at some point in time, it was the first generation of war. And basically the first generation of war was pre-gunpowder. Okay, it's dudes on the field, slugging it out, stabbing each other, beating each other with clubs. Okay, that's first generation warfare. Then we go into second generation, that's everything since gunpowder. And then we go into third generation, things advance. We're starting to look at aircraft. We're looking at trench warfare. We're looking at fire and maneuver. We're looking at heavy artillery. Goes on and on. Now we're getting into nuclear weapons. Then we're getting into fourth generation, which is non-state actors, doing specific things in countries, and also a lot of NGOs started getting involved there too. And now we pushed into that fifth generation of warfare. It's the fifth generation, just like we have generations of people. We've got boomers, we've got millennials, we've got Gen Xers. Well, it's the same thing. You have generations of war. And so when we explain these things, people can argue over where did the first generation start and end, and third and fourth start and end. They overlap. They constantly overlap. And when we talk about psychological operations have existed from the beginning. If you look back at the movie Braveheart, and you got that key character who paints himself blue to look all crazy, okay, that's part of a psychological operation. He's trying to psych out the enemy. So these things have gone on and on and on. The key part to remember now in the fifth generation war is that psychological operations is not an ancillary supporting activity. It's the primary strategy. And so everybody, once they kind of understand that it's the primary strategy within your country that operates behind a veil with an invisible hand, now they start to get it. Now they start to understand why they feel confused, why they feel like everybody around them is their enemy and they can't speak, they can't talk, they got to hush themselves. All this is part of psychological programming, which is a little bit different than psychological operations, which is happening through the AI sphere. It's true psychological programming. PSYOP is about changing your perspective on things. It's about reframing. But psychological programming is about the structure in which you use to make decisions. It's very, very back brain, very base level. And this is what's happening around us. And when we explain these things, they go, oh, now I get it. Because it's not just countries that are doing it. You've got non-state actors that are doing it. You've got NGOs, and there's good NGOs and there's bad NGOs, but they all have some sort of game they're playing. They're doing it too. So literally right now we're in a free for all. I mean, look around you. The American corporatocracy, and what is a corporatocracy? When you have capitalism that has gone corrupt, it's called the corporatocracy. Okay, it's the government. It's the government being controlled by corporations. Or our government being controlled by corporations. Well, guess what? Now those corporations are influenced by Chinese corporations. Okay. So now they've infiltrated through the corporatocracy, and they've infiltrated through the tech side, and they're infiltrating through the NGOs and the non-state actors. We're getting bombarded. Why do you think they're shutting down our border or opening up our borders? Why do you think they're trying to force everybody into this global thing? It's because that's their game. They're trying to make a global thing, and they're trying to get rid of nation states. And we feel it. We just don't know how to describe it. And that's why General Flynn and I sat down and said, hey, we need to start writing military-style manuals that are meant for civilians. If you're a 19-year-old who works at Home Depot, you can understand this book. We've written it for you. So everybody can get it. Everybody can understand it. And we like to say you can't have continuity of action until you have continuity of message. Well, you can't have continuity of message until you start speaking the same language, using the same words. So that's what this does. Just like the military, a lot of civilians hear people in the military talking, it's like, wow, it's like they're speaking a different language. Yeah. Well, they are to you, but to themselves, it's a very abbreviated, very direct, very succinct way to communicate, and everybody understands what's going on. They're all in the same sheet of music. So that's what we're trying to create now.
You know, I think it's really important because we are at war. People, whether you believe it or not, we've been at war for a very long time. And they declared war on freedom and liberty. They have an agenda. You know, I think about the psychological part of the information. I look at J6, for example, Boone. J6, I always said, because I was there, I was blessed. I actually spoke. I was with, you know, the president and all of that stuff during that time. The 5th and the 6th, both of those days, I'm going to tell you right now, but they were incredible. And leading up to the infiltration, which, make no mistake, that was an operation by our 3-letter agencies. It was highly coordinated and planned. I worked in DC for over 18 plus years. Actually, I used to have a place in Alexandria, and I flew in actually 2 weeks before January 6th to do some work that I had to do. And I remember driving around and seeing some of this nefarious activity being staged. And you fast forward with all of the psychological stuff that Nancy Pelosi and all of them did, and all of the news media immediately coming out saying this is an insurrection. Look at all of this narrative. When you had people letting people into the Capitol building, and as you know, Boone, you can't get into these buildings at all without somebody opening up a door. You can't break a window. It's just not possible. And so then the narrative became about President Trump. Well, really, in reality, it was about telling the American people in a psychological way, if you ever gather like that ever again, if you ever question an election, if you ever question the authority and the power, because we are the authority and the power, we will squash you and we will put you behind bars without due justice. And I believe that that's exactly, and that's why you've never seen people, when you talk about, oh, we're going to have a rally, or we need to, you know, get together in huge numbers, people get ginger about this and they back away. They're like, they can come and arrest us. The FBI can come knock on my door. They can take my children, my family, my livelihood away. That's what that was about.
You're right. There were psyacs going on, right? We talk about psyacs, psychological actions. And within psyacs, there are two different types of agents. There are discretionary agents of action, and there are incidental agents of action. This is doctrine stuff. Nothing in these books you're going to find is political. It's very doctrine. It's doctrine and technique, so everybody can understand it. And let me tell you, there's no love lost between the Republicans or the Democrats or how we feel about either one of them. They're both the uniparty, and there's a big problem there. I don't know if anybody can see this right here. I'm just going to try and line it up.
That's good.
Now,
how to make people kill people.
Tell me if that doesn't look familiar to what's going on. What phase do you think we're in right now?
Oh, we're in 4.
We're right there, aren't we?
We're in 4.
We're right there. Everybody can take a look at that, and that's what you're getting when you're reading these manuals, the Systems Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. It's doctrine and technique, so people can understand what they're looking at. Yes, everything you said about what you said about J6 is absolutely true. There was a psychological operation, there was a PSYOP plan, and there were PSYOPs that were used to further a PSYOP plan. And what is the effect? The effect is certain people, only certain groups are now afraid to gather because they don't believe the government is there to protect them. They think they will be persecuted. How many times have we heard as we were growing up, those who were in the Cold War growing up, you remember hearing things about Russia and how people could not gather and how there was a secret police and things like that. If I'm lying, I'm dying. I think we kind of feel that way now in the United States. This is a PSYOP.
Look what they did to parents who went to school board meetings all across this country. The FBI labeled them internally terrorists. Parents who wanted to push back against filth porn being taught in their children's school. You look at the way that they're being dragged out if they go to speak at the podium, by the way, which is their constitutional right to do. They're being dragged out by police officers who I believe should be arrested for not upholding the law and breaking the law. They don't have the right to do that. But this is all part of what you're talking about. Psychological operations equal psych apps, which equal an outcome. I always say that there's a trigger happens, but that trigger equals an action. There's some kind of action that they want from this trigger, good, positive, or neutral. And I love this book so much. I cannot wait to get more the next step in the next phase, because I love the military language, because, you know, that's the space that, you know, Boone, you and I have been privileged to be in. But I think the world needs to understand this is beyond America, by the way, Boone. I hope I have worldwide listeners. And I want to make this book available.
That's the back of the
globalism. I want to make this book. If you want more information on 5th generation warfare, where to get it, you can email Boone Cutler Boone, tell them where to go.
Oh, don't email me. Just go find it anywhere online or go
on Amazon or wherever. But email us,
yeah.
Women Fighting for America. You know, I think this is really important. And I was talking to Boone offline, and I'm not going to put him on the spot, but I believe we need serious training around this country. I know Ann Vandersteel and Mel K. I approached them 6 months ago, and I said, we need to take training, a full-on one-day intensive training around this country, and create individuals who understand how to be leaders in their communities to fight back against what is coming. There is a cabal, there is a plan, and they've been executing this without a check for decades. And it's time. We have been playing on the defense way too long. It is time for us to get on the offense. And it is time for us to push back and hold these globalist elites accountable with their own MO, because that's what we need to do. We have to use their language. You alluded to something earlier that I talk about. Labels matter, language matters. And we have to call things exactly what they are. That's why, Boone, not to get off topic, but you know what? I get really ticked off at the Republican Party, because they call these, even on the stage, and I've talked with some of these great individuals, they say, yeah, you know, we got to call out the rhinos. Bollocks. They're not rhinos. Let's be clear who they really are. They're infiltrators. These are part of the deep state. These are the actors who have infiltrated the party. They do just enough. They pass just enough laws to stay right here under the radar to be called a rhino. Instead, they're actually operatives working against the constitutional republic called America.
We have, right now, just so everybody understands, we talk about language, right? Right now, the media and the messaging to make this cultural shift, this color revolution, it is focused on 51% of the most socialist Democrats. That's 51% of the most socialist Democrats. That means 49% of Democrats and Republicans kind of believe the same stuff. You know, they're back in the 90s. They want to argue over 17% tax versus 12% tax, things like that. The stuff we used to argue about. It's not about becoming part of a global system. That's 51% of the most socialist Democrats. So truly, we've got to get out of this paradigm of Republican and Democrat. That is wasting way too much time, and we may not recover from it if we don't change our mindset very quickly. There is a uniparty that is focused on the globalist agenda, and then there's America First. And there are Republicans and Democrats on both sides.
Right.
And inside the guide, we tell you how to identify each so you can take appropriate action.
Absolutely. I talk about that all the time. I get really frustrated. If anybody out there honestly thinks that any politician is going to have any authority or power to shift and to change the trajectory we're on, you're fooling yourself right now. There's a lot of, I've met the few good ones, but people don't understand how Washington, D.C. work. And it's unfortunate. You might have all of the best intentions in the world, but until we remove the actors who are pulling the strings, and that's the Mitch McConnells, and I hate to say it, I mean, Kevin McCarthy's no better. They're grandstanding, but there are a few who really are working very, very hard, like Josh Hawley and some others. But there's a system. So has a rookie coming in, you have a couple things you have to do. One, and first and foremost, you're put in a room and you have to raise X amount of dollars. If you don't raise these dollars, you're not put on any committees. If you're not on a committee, you're not making any change or any impact whatsoever. You're just there as a body to vote yes or no. It's really that quite simple. So I'm a firm believer, and I've been talking about this for about 2 years now, is that the founding fathers, and I think that this goes perfectly, I think they would absolutely love your book, Fifth Generation Warfare, because they understood warfare. And it was different. It looked a little different back then, but it's still the same. The Constitution is very clear. When we have a government that's gone completely rogue, who no longer serves the natural law, nor does it serve the actual Constitution of the United States, and they subvert it, it is our duty. And you are a soldier. And I want you to explain to people exactly what duty is and what sacrifice looks like with duty, because there's always a sacrifice with duty and that calling that God has put on your heart. We need to replace the government currently as it sits peacefully with the Constitution, but get rid of these people who are in office who not only don't serve the American people anymore or put the Constitution first, but also we need to remove the deep state actors who have embedded themselves and who are making laws that they are not even elected officials, and they are actually changing the landscape of this great nation.
Well, ultimately, duty requires selflessness. And this is the issue that we have inside of a lot of our political officials. They are no longer selfless. They're selfish, and they're serving a corporatocracy, which is very heavily influenced by the CCP. And these are things that we really, really need to dig into. We start out with this one. This is kind of like the worldview, get everybody oriented to the situation. This is about centers of gravity. What's the main center of gravity that they're using at the individual level?
Again, which this number 2 center of gravity.
Yeah, this is about the main center of gravity, artificial intelligence. And we focus in here about AI-driven psychological programming, foreign-born AI-driven psychological programming. You have no idea how many times you turn on your computer, you're looking at something that your information is being curated. You're being manipulated all the way around, and we give these things to our kids constantly as babysitters. It's ridiculous. It's dumb. It's ridiculous. We've got to back this up and stop immediately. The next book, I'll just give you, I don't think I've talked to anybody else about it, but I'll give you a heads up. When we come out with session 3, it is specifically about asymmetrical political warfare. What asymmetrical tactics are being used to change the composition of the political framework of the United States? And it comes through, again, that corporatocracy. So we've got to understand how much influence comes through AI, how much influence comes through the corporatocracy, and how much influence all the way around is happening globally in these different areas to reshape what the world looks like and what total control is. Look at this digital currency that's about to launch. You think we're not going to have big problems? We are. We need to fight back against this right now. And some people are talking about it. A lot of people in quote unquote our space are talking about it, but not enough people are talking about it. People aren't up in arms about it, and they should be.
I think one of the most dangerous things we have is global currency. I mean, you think about the digital, your social score, your social credit score, and that's everything's going to come back to that. It was really interesting because I broke a major story, and nobody is even talking about this to this day. Bank of America, these banks are filing patents. These patents have to do with digital currency, but they're equated to health. So if the WHO, which this illegally, I believe, has given over our freedoms and our rights to the World Health Organization. If there's another pandemic, well, a pandemic could be civil unrest. It's not just about a virus that they're going to outbreak. The language matters. And so why would banks need to have patents that have to do with your social credit score and digital currency? Well, here's the reason why. Because if you don't comply, if you're part of the resistance, they can shut you down and cut you off financially. You won't be able to shop. You won't be able to get food, groceries, supplies, water, food, nothing. And so this is very dangerous. So let's expand on that.
Well, we can. And like, I'm not trying to just sit here and push the book, but look right there. We're talking about reliability networks. Okay. Chapter 8 inside the book refers to reliability networks and self-sustainability, because once we remove their ability to manipulate the conditions in our lives, and we're self-sufficient, we have a reliability network within a 10-minute car drive of our home, they don't have the control that they used to. They just don't. And if we're doing that everywhere, they don't have any control. And a reliability network is multi-use. It can be used for political purposes. It can be used for food purposes. It can be used to help out the community. It can be used for a number of things. So it's very, very good to understand what is reliability network and how do you build that. It's very important to understand what self-sustainability looks like, especially in the large population centers, because that's where the unrest happens. That's where people start turning on each other, and that's where they want to force people so they can control people in a centralized way.
Yeah, Boone, and you and I talked yesterday off camera, and I have not read that particular book yet. And I was explaining to you that that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're doing a tour. It's called Take Action Across America Tour. And it's a one-day intensive training where exactly that we teach you how to be in reliability networks. That wasn't the word that I used, but I was like, you were like, Christie, look, it's right here in the book. And I think it would be very powerful. And we are going to talk about this, and that's joining forces, because I think the working in the silos needs to stop. Right now, the freedom movement, the liberty movement, in my personal opinion, there's no more room for egos. This isn't about boosting other people and your own personal organizations. You can have all of that. But I think leaders, strategic leaders, it is time to lay down the mantle of self and come together and collaborate on a scale never seen before. And then activate the grassroots. And that's everyday citizens who live in these communities and neighborhoods to give you the tools, the power that you need to fortify your reliability network. A lot of people don't know how to grow food. Some people don't. They don't know where to go, where to get it. Where's clean food sources? Where's farmers who haven't injected their animals with mRNA, right? How do you clean a weapon? How do you discharge a weapon? Most people don't even know that it's kind of smart to find out who has what and have the same type of weapon that uses the same bullets. Because guess what? If somebody's coming at you and trying to harm you, if you can't interchange your bullets, people don't even know. They're like, I never thought about that. But these are the things that we need to teach you to have one thought process on, I call it geofencing, but to geofence your personal surroundings and have like-minded individuals. I think it's very, very important. Don't you, Boone?
Yes, it's definitely time. We say unite the tribes. It's time to unite the tribes. This is what happens. This is what is the natural organic step when these junctures happen, when they try to break down nation states and you're trying to save your country. You have to unite the tribes. And that's neighborhood by neighborhood, that's group by group, that's audience by audience. You unite those things. We don't talk anything about firearms inside of any of the books. It's just I think that's a little bit overblown sometimes. I think some people, not you, but I think some people have really gotten over focused on watching things like what was that Red Dawn. They have this Red Dawn mentality. Yeah. And it's not Red Dawn. If you really want to study something that's more realistic, study the French Resistance, see how they operated. Okay, they had networks. They knew how to work in underground, things like that. I'm not saying people need to do sabotage, start blowing up trains and stuff like that. We're not there. Gosh, no. But as far as understanding where people are, what they can do, what strengths they have, what you have to leverage to get what you need, to get what you don't have. And that's how people work together. And that's what reliability networks are. And for lack of a better term, it's a support group, not just of your physical needs, but your emotional needs. You want to know that you're part of a team that's there to support each other. And I think right now, especially in the United States, Well, in other countries too. Look what's happening across the Netherlands. Look what's happening in Australia, the UK, Canada. And all these people are reaching out because they're reading the book and they're saying, yes, you're exactly right. We're doing these things. I got a call today from a guy that's in another country. This happens about once a week now, saying, hey, we're doing this here. What do you think? How do we change things? And so it is happening on a global level. We're talking about with the reliability networks, because it takes a network to defeat a network. We know this to be true. So if they have a global network, we must have a global network. We must unite the tribes. We've got to keep them off balance. We have the mass equals penetration. We just have to know how to coordinate with each other. And the first thing we have to do for coordination is speak the same language.
Yeah, there are more of us than there are of them. And I work with a lot of I'm working with the Dutch farmers. I've been, working with them hand in hand, and some leaders over in the Netherlands and also in France currently, and Australia and Canada. And, we're putting together a global forum, global leaders forum. I spoke to General Flynn the other day about it. He was like, that is such a great idea, Christie. I'm formulating that right now, because I believe that there needs to be a collision of grassroots leaders who are really making impacts in their countries, along with global leaders like Christine Anderson, who's a personal friend of mine out of the EU. She's a powerhouse, and others, and General Flynn, and have this convergence, because we have to combat what is coming if we don't stop this. And that's this globalist elite agenda. This is not conspiracy theory. It is facts. And we've seen it. They've laid it out. They've kind of, I believe, pulled the curtain in some ways, and have shown the world on a stage exactly what their plans are. But they still like to keep it tied up in a really pretty little bow. So I think your book, Fifth Generation Warfare, is such a key time in history for this to come out. And it is a great resource for everybody to read, to digest. I think that, along with the Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrates, that's another book that needs to be on everybody's mantle. The Constitution and the Bible, to me, are some really great handbooks that you need to get a hold of and understand that we are in a battle, and we need to be battle ready. I created this shirt that I wear right now, Women Fighting for America, Battle Ready. From a Christian perspective, biblical perspective, God has given us instructions as well on how to put on and don the full armor of God. We just forgot how to do it. There's actually instructions behind each piece of equipment, and it could go across the board for anything, not just from a biblical perspective. In the military, we have certain equipment that we have to put on for protection. And if you don't put that equipment on properly, you can be harmed or even killed. So whether it's a book, whether it's actual physical armor, we need to understand how to do this collectively together in a unification way, in a peaceful way, and take back our world, quite frankly.
No, we have to get our mind right. And I'm glad you brought up the Dutch, because session 1 comes out in Dutch this month, Dutch and Spanish. And so is the audio book for session 1. And in a few months, we're going to do the same thing with session 2. So it's we're going to put it out multilingual. Everybody's going to have access to it, because I'll tell you what, the Dutch really are fired up about this. And there's a lot of Spanish speaking countries equally ready to get involved, want to speak the same language. And so we're doing some translations on each one of these books to make sure we can get the message out globally.
I love that. Boone, so let's go through this again. So you have a series, there's 3 sessions with your book. So let's lay them out. Session 1, session 2, session 3, and just to overcap, what can people expect to get out of the series of 5th Generation Warfare?
Each of them interlock with the other sessions. The session 1 is the overview, the Citizen's Guide. The series itself is called the Citizen's Guide to 5th Generation Warfare. Session 1 is Intro to 5GW. Session 2 is How to Fight Artificial Intelligence. Session 3 is going to be Asymmetrical Political Warfare, and I'm not going to tell you what Session 4 is yet, but it's going to come out around the time of the election. So this is all getting people prepared for these things. It is a series. In session 2, you're going to see references to session 1. I'm sure in session 3, you're going to see references to 1 and 2. So they do interlock. They're small enough that they can be carried in your purse, in your pocket, in your backpack. They're not overly, they're not cumbersome at all. And they're very easy to read. Once again, we write these at a level that the average person who's 19 years old working at Home Depot can understand, read, digest, and also share the same information with their peer groups. So everybody can get it. In each one of them, there's also what we have here. We got the QR code clock, where there's 12 different QR codes. So this goes to different videos. It's very key to understand, kind of like a mindset thing to understand what's happening inside the book. In session 2, at the very end, we've actually written the proposed legislation that people might want to consider contacting their legislators with and saying, hey, listen, this is how we get control under these things, and actually giving the tools to the populace to be able to use and create the change. There's so many people out there say, hey, I want to do it. I want, but I don't know where to start. And I don't know what all this means. And, but they have the desire. They just don't have the capability yet. So they need a little bit of training. Take that desire, match it with training. Now we have capability. And this is what we're building. And uniting the tribes is a huge, huge factor in all of that.
Everybody out there, please. I'm not getting paid to say this. I don't get anything off of this. This is really important book. I really believe 5th generation warfare. You need to get your hands on it. We are going to be doing training all over the nation. Hopefully, we'll also bring it on a global scale. I'm going to talk to Boone and General Flynn offline about possibly doing some collaborations, because if we don't do this and you don't get educated and we don't create, I call it fiber optic networks. Fiber optics is light moving at fast speed. Well, we're the light. There's darkness and there's light in this world. And we want to bring light across the world. And the only way we bring light is where we're all collectively singing to the same language, the same tune. We're on the same page. They do it very well. The left is very good at collaborating together. Even if they disagree, they will come out with one front and they will preach the same thing and push it out across everything. And that's why they've been so successful. And we have got to learn to play nice together in the sandbox and collaborate together, break down those silos. But us freedom fighters like Boone and General Flynn, myself, Mel K, and all of these people that I've been blessed to get to know, there's only so many of us. We need your help. We need the populace of the world. We need the citizens of the world to join forces and arms together. We're all brothers and sisters in this together. This isn't about countries. This is about humanity. This is about freedom and liberty on a global scale. Together, we can fight back the evildoers, which are the globalist elites who want to have a one world system. Please email us at womenfightingforamerica@protonmail.com. You can get that email off of the website, Women Fighting. Just Google Women Fighting for America. Engage. If you're interested in getting a hold of 5th generation warfare, search for it. I'm sure it's out there on many platforms. But if you can't find it, email me and I will get you in contact with those individuals who can send you this book. And I might even get it, maybe a couple of you, a signature or two. But please do this. Together we can fight back. And the last few minutes, we have about 4 minutes left, 3 minutes left. I want to ask you a question about America. Why is it that the prize on a global scale is America?
Because everybody can look to America and say, we want to be like that. Traditionally, that's what we've been. We've been that beacon. Like the CCP. The CCP cannot get control of its own people in China until it destroys the United States. And that's the same thing across the globe. There's the countries like Australia and Canada that right now they're like, man, we really wish we wouldn't have given up our guns. People in the UK are like, don't give up your guns. Don't give up your guns. They just feel so neutered and powerless. And so we are the ones who are the least neutered and the least powerless. Therefore, they have to focus on us a lot. If you want to see what the next 3, 4, and 5 steps look like, Talk to people in the Netherlands, talk to people in the UK, talk to people in Canada, and just have a conversation. You can find them. You have access to social media. You can find people. So talk to them, have those conversations. They'll talk to you. And when they do, you'll understand that not only is there a sense of urgency, but there has to be a sense of unification, us against them. The in-group and out-group is no longer Republican versus Democrat. The in-group and out-group is those who believe in freedom versus those who believe in globalism.
You know, Boone, you said something very key. We say this all the time. It's no mistake. One of the parts of warfare, fifth-generation warfare, is to keep us divided. And that is through separation of racism, LGBT. It is not a coincidence that you're seeing CRT, LGBTQ+, the race issue, reparations. All of these things are meant to keep division. And when I say that is because these are controversial subjects that people get heated about. They're emotional. They evoke a lot of emotion. And then also, like with reparations stuff, it evokes money that we're giving. Well, you don't deserve that. So it pits neighbor against neighbor, daughter against daughter, son against son, and that family against family members. And we've seen this through the COVID lockdowns. That's part of their warfare against us. And we cannot afford to fall into their playbook anymore. That's why I think fifth generation warfare, this is a playbook on the good side, the light side, and how we can combat all of this and push back against the World Economic Forum, the IMF, and the globalist elites agenda. With the last 3 minutes left, you know, you served in Iraq. It's a hellhole over there. We've mentioned China. You've got the those who are Sharia compliant Muslims who chant death to America. And I've talked about this for a long time because I've been on the border. I'm actually the only citizen who has actually traveled not just the full 2,000 plus miles of border in and out of Mexico, but northern borders, Central and South America, looking at how they're using borders to destabilize this country. I believe it's like a Trojan horse. In about 1.5 to 2 minutes, my fear is the sleeper cells that we've already got here. And again, fifth generation warfare, your book would go hand in hand with this because they do have a plot and a plan when all else fails. Can you speak to that from a military perspective, what your thoughts are in about 2 minutes?
I don't even need that. I need 20 seconds. Build your reliability networks and become self-sustaining. Do it right now. You do not have any more time.
Yeah, I get really frustrated about people saying, oh, 24 election, Trump's going to be reinstalled. I'm going to tell you, and I hope I'm wrong, and I'll be the first one to come out to America and the world and say Christie Hutcherson with Women Fighting for America was wrong. I don't believe they can afford to have the election if they know that they're not going to be able to do the nefarious activity they did because what they've done is now exposed. If they think that they're not going to be able to hold on to that power, they're not going to let that power go. I believe there'll be, I call it the nuclear option. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be multiple small attacks. We already know we have cells here in the United States. I don't believe that we are going to see a 24 election. Martial law can be activated and to stop an election from happening. So from your perspective, from someone who's been in theater, that's war zone, and have been in the military, what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are you don't necessarily have to be overly focused on cells doing things in the physical domain. There's a cell in your house right now that's working on everybody's brain. We are not each other's enemy. People are in filter bubbles and we're being turned against each other. I think that's the main line of effort. And we need to understand what those look like, and we need to tear them down. We need to start talking to each other like human beings again and realize that your neighbor is not your enemy. We got to shake hands. We got to go to church together. We got to eat together. We got to talk together and realize that it's not us against us. It's us against them. They've done a very good job. Look how many families are having so much internal strife. And that's because your kid is watching YouTube and they're spinning these things up. I mean, it's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. And these filter bubbles are causing conflict. And once we get into intimacy with AI intimacy, which is happening very, very soon, we didn't even get into it, but that's a big deal. Lastly, I want everybody to go watch AI Dilemma. Go watch AI Dilemma. It's on YouTube. It will help you get tuned up to understanding what the main center of gravity of our adversary is.
Yeah, civil discord. We need to start having that again. We can agree to disagree. We're all in this together. We're all Americans. We're all created in one image. We're all brothers and sisters, and we're not enemies. That is a great message. Boone, I'm going to have you back on. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to have a part 2 with both you and General Flynn. Thank you so much for your work. This is groundbreaking. God bless you. Thank you for what you do. I look forward to working with you in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. This has been an incredible episode. I told you were not going to want to miss it. Go back and watch with General Flynn, and then watch this coming Sunday. And then the next Sunday, we're going to have Sheriff Brad Coe, who's going to talk about the border. Please, you're not going to want to miss this. Thank you so much, Bridie on TV. Without Bridie on TV, I wouldn't be able to stay on the front lines. And without support from viewers like you, both from your time, talents, and treasures. We need donations to keep us on the air. We need donations to help us fight and combat human trafficking and child trafficking. Please get involved. You can go right there to givesendgo.com/WFFA border. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in. Share this message. Get it out there. Spread the word every Sunday from 1 to 2 in the afternoon on the front lines with Christie Hutcherson. Thank you. And until next week, God bless you.